Welcome back. I'm Speed at the bottom of the helix. Our next presenter, if you don't know him yet, started soldering at the age of 7. Ham radio operator, KXOE. Bachelor's, master's degree in electronic engineering. He even taught it in college. Claims to be relatively new to model railroading. Yeah, right. But he also founded Lichtfield Station, well known for DCC. Welcome to Mr. DCC, MMR number 574, Mr. Bruce Petraca.
Thanks, Speed, and welcome everybody. Let's jump right into the clinic here, and we're going to talk today about the ABCs of consisting or consisting, depending on how you want to say it. I wrote the DCC Impulses column for Model Railroad Hobbyist for many years, and I got a lot of information about DCC in there, and I started thinking about putting it into a book, just taking everything and writing a book, and it came out to be a really huge thing, and some stuff was really dated and that sort of thing. So needs a lot of changes, so I'm working on that now, calling it the ABCs of DCC, and this is a bit of it about consisting. If you go to my website, which is mrdccu.com for Mr. DCC's University, you'll see here the MRH magazine page mentioned or on the header. If you click on that, there's a whole index to the columns that I've written, and you just click on the dates and it'll take you out and you can read what I've written, and it's a good way to learn a lot about DCC. So for today's discussion, what is consisting? Well, in prototype practice, the makeup of a train is called the consist. What cars are on it, what locomotives are on it, etc. And model railroaders use that term to refer to running some locomotives together, and we use it, as a noun, as a verb, as an adjective. So, it's like, okay, so what about? Well, let's talk about how to make locomotives run together easily on one throttle with DCC. That's the part we're going to discuss here today. One of the biggest things you can have for successful consists is to have matched locomotives. The closer they are to being matched, the better. And I'm not talking about just speed matching. The brand, the model, the vintage will make speed matching easier. So will the decoder manufacturer, model, and settings. And also, if you're mixing sound and non-sound locomotives, it's really good to use manufacturers' products of a similar vintage and the same manufacturer's products. In other words, if you have a Soundtrack's decoder in your sound locomotive, it will run better and easier if you have a Soundtrack's non-sound decoder, say in a B unit running behind the A unit, that sort of thing. Partially because what I do with a situation like that is I get one locomotive running the way I want it to be, the sound locomotive, and I get all the settings set up, and then I write exactly the same settings using JMRI into the B unit and just change the address if I'm going to use a different address. Also, some decoders, noticeably some of the Digitrax decoders, change the way they operate when you're running in a consist versus when you're not, and if you're using advanced consisting. So you want to be, if you're having some issues, you might want to check on that. Just a kind of a word to the wise. There's really three basic methods of consisting. Basic, which is like kind of a brute force method. DCC system assisted, where the DCC system remembers all the information. It's called universal consisting. And then there's advanced consisting, which is basically involves the decoder itself and that. So let's talk about brute force, number one. This is where you take two or more decoders and put them in the same or different pieces of hardware. You're already doing this if you have like a sound decoder and a lighting decoder, and you put them in the the tender and the boiler of a steam locomotive, and you assign the same address to them, you've just created a brute force consist, whether you realized it or not. The key there is, of course, they have to have the same address, and it has to be the same whether it's long or short. And and then you adjust the running direction of the decoders by flipping CV29, setting the direction of the locomotive if you want them to run like opposite directions on a back-to-back type consist. Once you set it up, it's brute force. Once you set it up, you've got them programmed. It works fine no matter what vintage or what system you're on, whatever else. Just you take it out and run it. That's a cool way to go. The advantages: any decoder that will support the addresses will work with it. Any system will work with it. And here's the big thing about it is it's impervious to system reset commands. Some of the other methods of consisting decoders, if you do a system reset, will wipe out the consist memory, and those will be gone. It's difficult to set it up and break it down. That's the disadvantage here. So it's that's the way to go. Universal, or it's also called by some manufacturers old style consisting. This is where you tell the DCC system what locomotives you're going to have out there, and it remembers which decoders are part of which consist. You assign it a consist address, and it all runs together. It's very, very important, if you do this style of consisting, that you break the consist apart on the layout where the consist was created before you take the decoders or take the locomotives off the layout, because everything is stored in the command station, and so you want to free up those positions in the command station, and also release the hold on those locomotives so that they can go on to other things. Again, any decoder will do, because as long as it'll run on the command station can talk to it, it'll work. It can use any address supported by the DCC system, and in fact, for example, Digitrax will support running a non-decoder equipped locomotive on address 0, and I have actually tested it out. And yeah, you can put address 0 in as one of the consist addresses. The issue there is that locomotives running on address 0, DC locomotives running on address 0, don't necessarily run as quickly as they would if they had a decoder in them. And so if its brethren are there, remember back to the rule 1 at the beginning. Match the locomotives. Well, it's hard to match locomotives that don't have decoders to ones that do have decoders. And the DCC systems will mostly automate the process for you. The disadvantage is every locomotive uses one slot, and the consist uses one slot. So if you have 4 locomotives in this old style consist, that uses up 5 slots in your DCC system. Well, for example, the early Zephyrs only had 10 slots. So it was really easy to run out of slots this way. And again, if you reset the system or you change the battery, you lose the consist information, and you want to break it down before you go. Advanced consisting, this number 3 method, is, I think, the most elegant way to do it, and it has more advantages available under certain DCC systems than others. We'll talk about that a bit later. It's decoder based, so it's very sensitive to the features and vintage of the decoders, because it was several years into DCC, probably in the mid to late 90s, where most manufacturers started supporting the use of a consist address. In the CV19 was what was selected for that. And then even later than that, they started talking about CV 21 and 22 for controlling functions that are active and how they're addressed within the consist. And so to have everything work well, you need a decoder that responds to all three of those CVs, 19, 21, and 22. If you there are ways to create an advanced consist not on the system, and if you create one and you pick up the same 2, 3, 4 whatever locomotives on, and you're running them on, say, consist address 100, and you pick them up and you take them over to another layout and you put them down and you call up address 100, they'll run on address 100 on the other layout. Not all systems will help you automate setting them up, and so that gets a bit tricky. They're also limited to only 26 consist addresses, 1 through 127, and they are short addresses, so that's a little restrictive, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. JMRI is really good at helping set this up when you're programming the locomotive, but it doesn't register the consist with your system, so you can't get as much information as you'd like, or it doesn't just automatically transfer on systems that don't set them up automatically. Let's see, I covered CVs 19, 21, 22. The decoder itself stores the information about what consist I belong to. So operating an advanced consist with your DCC system only uses one slot, just whatever the consist address is. The system doesn't know about all these different locomotives that are responding to that address. The decoders inside the locomotives are telling them what they should be doing based on what data is coming across the system, the DCC bus for them. And okay, this is what it looks like if you're working on it within JMRI, and this kind of shows you what's going on, and it's a little bit easier. I added the blue text on here to help explain what's going on. The yellow and the gray is what comes up in JMRI. In the upper left-hand corner, you'll see the consist address and direction. This is setting CV19, and this particular locomotive was on consist address of number 103, and it's running reversed. So if let's talk about an F unit, it would be when you say 103 go forward, it will go backwards. It will go in the opposite direction from where the cab is. So that's what those two settings mean. Some decoders allow you to set the consist momentum differently than the consist or than the momentum of the locomotive when it's not running in a consist. Where people use this is, for example, a road switcher. They'll put a modest amount of acceleration into the locomotive and then put a large amount of acceleration into the consist situation, so that when you have a big train behind it, you've got it consisted with other locomotives and you're pulling lots of cars, it has more lag and it runs more prototypically. If you leave 0 in those two numbers in the upper right-hand corner, acceleration rate and braking rate, if you leave 0 in there, it will default to whatever you have set for the basic locomotive as far as acceleration and braking. The bottom 2/3 of the page is what responds where. And if you look at the first two entries, the consist address activation for F0F in forward, that's function 0 going forward, will respond to the consist address. In other words, the headlight, if you have a headlight on there, will respond if you are talking to address 103. Now, the next one down is what are you doing about F0R? For example, if you have a road switcher, that would tend to be the reverse headlight. By setting that to respond to the locomotive address only, you keep the system from having you going down the road with the light between the locomotives on, no matter which way it's going, because the system, the decoder will not turn on the rear light when you're talking to the consist address, which is the 103 address that was in the upper left. So that's the two big things. And you can control with JMRI. You can select function 0 through 12 and 0 forward and 0 reverse. So you've got 13 different functions that you can control, whether it's you talk to it on the locomotive address or on the consist address. It's a lot to swallow, but think about it, and I think it'll come around a little bit. The advantages to advanced consisting: some DCC systems will set it up and work very, very well with resulting consist. It's easy to set up with JMRI, or you can do it yourself by setting CV 19, 21, and 22 yourself and figuring out what they need to be and programming it with a handheld throttle if you don't use JMRI. JMRI is a whole lot easier, JMRI Decoder Pro, Panel Pro, going into the Decoder Pro section, they're all the same thing. But you may, now, if you're going to move these around between systems, you may need to write down somehow and remember the consist address, because if you get to another system and you don't know what the consist address is, you're going to have a tough time talking to those locomotives. Go through all 126 possibilities and see where it moves, perhaps. And it's impervious to system reset commands. The second thing, the universal consists are the only ones that really get wiped out by when you reset the system. Disadvantages: it uses a short address, 1 to 127 on most systems, but systems like Lens only respond to up to 99 on short addresses, and so that's the limit there. Now, the problem is, if you create a consist like you saw on the JMRI page on address 103, and you have a locomotive that has a short address of 103 in it, and you say go 103, both of them are going to go, the consist of locomotives and that other single locomotive. They will interfere with each other. Not all DCC systems, blah, blah, blah. And some decoders don't support the CVs 21 and 22 that give you all these easy functions. I'm going through this relatively quickly. Hopefully I'll generate some questions and we'll have a chance to iron out specific situations that people want to talk about. So let's look at how each system manufacturer, this is not decoders, this is the system, how they handle consisting and consisting information. I didn't want to put anything out that wasn't correct. So when I wrote the article that this clinic came from, I went to every DCC manufacturer and I said, this is what I understand. Do you agree with me that this is the way your system works? And so that's what I'm working from, because, for example, I've never had my hands on a Zemo system. So, it was kind of that sort of thing. Also, I asked CVP about their EasyDCC system, and they did not respond. So I'm not including it, as I don't want to say something that the manufacturer doesn't agree with. Digitrax only supports what they call universal consisting, which is number 2. And they spell it with a capital V, just like that. It's fairly easy to set up. Now, this is an older series throttle. They have the new DT602 out now, but I believe it works exactly the same way. I haven't seen one yet. What you do now, let's assume you have locomotive 1, 2, 3, 4, and locomotive 5, 6, 7, 8. You want to make a consist out of those 2. You push the right button here, click down on the knob to tell the throttle that you want to talk to the locomotive on the right knob there, and you call up locomotive 1, 2, 3, 4 as you see, and you adjust its speed to going forward. And then on the left knob, you call up 5, 6, 7, 8 and adjust its speed to the direction that you want it to run relative to 1, 2, 3, 4. And when I'm doing this, I really like to set them on the track a few inches apart, the 2 locomotives. And so I get locomotive 1, 2, 3, 4 going to the right, and 5, 6, 7, 8. Maybe this is a back-to-back of 2 F units. So I get 1, 2, 3, 4 going to the right, and I get 5, 6, 7, 8 pointing to the left. So I set it going backwards, so it's going to the right. So now I have both of them going to the right. Then I press the MU and the plus button. You see the MU button here, and the plus button is in the row below it. And now they're consisted, and you see the CN in the display that tells you that they are consisted together and that you're talking to the 2 of them. And they will be operated speed and direction based on what you do with the right-hand knob. The left-hand knob, you notice it says CN where the speed is normally shown. That's because it is now slaved to that 1, 2, 3, 4. And they've used up 3 slots. It's assigned a consist. The Digitrax system is assigned a consist slot and a 1, 2, 3, 4 slot and a 5, 6, 7, 8 slot. So that's the way they go. And when you're done, if you press MU and minus, they split off and you're back to having them separated. The CN goes away and you get a display of speed on the left-hand throttle. Consists are lost if you reset the system. So that's something to remember. And we'll talk about that a little bit later as well. Digitrax will run advanced consists if you set them up manually or you set them up with Decoder Pro. Moving on to ESU, their ecosystem, they do universal consisting, the second version again. It's really easy to set up with their touch screen. Here's a picture of their touch screen, which when I sized it for this presentation got all this weird wire lines in it. But you select the loco, use the touch screen to add it to the consist or adjust its position in the consist, take it out of the consist by pushing it back and forth. And again, they'll run advanced consists if you set them up manually. Lens, and there's becoming fewer and fewer lens people around, but lens refers to universal as double heading, and they allow you to have one double-headed consist in the system at a time. And here's the instructions out of the LH100 manual, the LH100 cab manual, and you select the locomotive, and then you just go down the press F, press 2, press plus, key in the address of the second locomotive, press enter. Now it's done as a slot. Usually, I say they will only let you do one. Most lens systems will only let you do one. There may be some out there that will let you do more, but most of them will only let you do one. But they also support advanced consisting, and these are limited by the number of slots available in their system. And if I remember right, the latest system has like 250 slots or something like that. So it becomes virtually unlimited. And here's the steps to go through it. You can use all 98 of the short addresses, but again, it may conflict with the single locomotives, and here's the instructions, what buttons to push and exactly what order to push them. I'm not going to walk through them. MRC does advanced consisting. It's somewhat assisted, but part of it is, and the Prodigy Express squared instructions are here. Part of it is that the station, the command station, will set up the address, the CV19 consist address, and the direction of running, but it doesn't do anything to remember it, and so it literally tells you to write it down. So that's why I say it is somewhat assisted. I really like the way NCE does advanced consists. Again, they'll do universals if you set them up, but it's very sophisticated and it works very well. The command station, sometimes some of the command stations let you choose your own address. Others will assign an address between 1 and 127, and it remembers it. You don't have to. But it won't arbitrate conflicts with existing locomotives on your layout. So you need to be careful there. But there's a way around that. We'll talk about that in just a second. Now, once it's created a consist, you can talk to the consist by the address of any locomotive that's in the consist or with the consist address. But forget the consist address. What you want to do is you want to use the locomotive address. So back to the 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, 6, 7, 8 running together. We've created the consist, just as we talked about earlier, of those two locomotives. Now they're sitting there together on the layout. If you select 1, 2, 3, 4 and say go forward, the locomotives will go in the direction that 1, 2, 3, 4 is pointed. If you stop it and you select 5, 6, 7, 8 and say go forward, they'll go the other direction. They'll go the direction that 5, 6, 7, 8 is pointed. And so this allows some very, very realistic operations. Also, NCE allows 2-digit addresses to be long addresses, and you can set them up that way when you program the locomotive. So back to the thing we talked about earlier, you have locomotive 10, or you have a consist number 103, and you have a locomotive numbered 103. Well, if you make the locomotive 103 long address, then to select that locomotive, you put in 0103, and to select the consist that's on 103, you just type in 103. The 0 in front of the short address tells the system that you really, it's a short address, but you really want to talk to it using the long address. And so that if you adopt that, if you are an NCE system user and you only run your locomotives on NCE systems, then if you adopt the habit of everything gets a long address, even if it has a number below 127 or lower, then you never have any conflicts on your consisting. So walking through how to set this up, you press consist setup on the ProCab. You press enter twice, and you get this screen, the second screen down, that says enter the lead locomotive number. So I typed in 1, 2, 3, 4. You press enter. It says which way, and it picked the consist address of 127. If I wanted to, I could change that, but I never fiddle with that. And which way do you want this locomotive to run? It says F for forward. I press enter. To put the next locomotive, so it comes up with that top screen that says consist 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, enter the address for the rear locomotive. I enter 5, 6, 7, 8, press enter. It says which direction do you want it to run? I say forward, so that would create an elephant style consist. If you said reverse, it would create a back-to-back consist. And if you need more locomotives, you just keep circling around on the sheet until you're done. When you're finally done, when you reach this screen, you just press enter. I already talked about that, so you don't care about the consist addresses. You just select the cab address of the locomotive on either end of the consist and tell it to run. And that's why I like NCE's consisting system the best of any that I've run with. To get rid of a consist, you call up any address. It's either 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5, 6, 7, 8, and you press consist and then clear, and you enter the address if you need to. It's probably already there, and you press enter, and it's gone. It's taken it out of the. It's gone back, and it's reset all of the consist addresses for all of the decoders that were in that consist and taken the consist information out of its memory. Zemo only does universal consisting. They have a key called TP on their latest throttle here, and it's used to create or remove the consist, much the way the Digitrax setup is. They do have one thing that, like NCE, if you address any locomotive in the consist, it will move the whole consist, so that you don't get into remembering or writing down the consist address that way either. So here's a summary. Advanced consisting that uses the decoder based number 3 on the right hand. It can be run with any system, but only Lens, MRC, and NCE assist you in setting them up. With the other 3, you have to do all the programming of CV19, 21, and 22 yourself, and then it'll run with it. In the center column, the universal old style consists are a standard item with Digitrax. You can do it with and ESU. Lens offers an option for it. MRC offers an option for it. Zemo does it automatically. NCE calls it old style consists, but it works. Their advanced consisting works so smoothly. I wouldn't even think of going there myself. So one thing to remember, and I get lots and lots and lots of service calls, kind of thing. People come to me and say, "Oh, I have this locomotive. I have sound. I have lights. It won't move." I say, "Go read CV19. Is it anything but 0? "Oh yeah, it's got a number in it." Okay, that locomotive, that decoder is still in a consist on a system. You took it away from a system where it was consisted, or you whatever. Set CV19 to 0, which will take it out of that, and then it should run on the locomotive address. And that cures about 97% of those sorts of questions that people raise with me. I'm just going to compare Digitrax and NCE because I've got most experience with those two. The trains at our club, we used the advanced method number 2 or number 3 set up with JMRI because it was reset proof. Because being a club, people come, people go, they bring throttles. We tend to reset the system in between every operating session, and so with the advanced consisting in our through trains, they were always available. There was nothing causing issues there. Places where you had, and I know several people who had Digitrax layouts that where they had through trains that they needed to be able to set up and kill and that sort of thing. They used the universal command station based consisting that Digitrax builds into their systems, and it works well. It just, the only issue is that you don't want to reset the command station or change batteries. Because either way, you lose that information out of the command station. And NCE systems, as long as you have the newer decoders with the CV, I say newer, it's been about, 12, 15 years, something like that they've been available. Using advanced consisting is kind of the way that I think we should go there. So that's what I have to share with you. What do we got? We got some questions, Speed?
Yes, we do. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
I can hear you.
First.
Of course, I can't see anything, but
that's up to the.
I'm sorry.
That's up to the video master.
Ah, well.
First question: what is a CV?
Remember roll-top desks with all the little pigeonholes in the back? Think of those pigeonholes as the place you leave information that you want to communicate with the decoder, and they call it a CV, which stands for configuration variable. I hate the term. I hate most of the terminology that goes into DCC because it's as we were discussing in the roundtable earlier today. Most of what people do that's technical is not designed to be easy on the user, and lots of terms like CV or starting voltage. That it isn't correct, but it's what's there. Next.
You talk about don't change the batteries. Can't you keep the system powered up and swap the battery out to keep the memory there?
You can. I don't like to do it that way. If you pop the old battery out, for example, and you have slippery fingers and you drop it onto the board, you risk damaging your system with the power on. Some manufacturers have 2 battery slots on their motherboards, and so you can put the new battery in one with the power off. You can put the new battery in one slot, and you can take the old battery out of the other slot, and that's a whole lot safer way to do it.
So, what do most people do for picking a consist address?
Well, in our club, we had our through trains numbered from 100 to 107, with the odd numbers going one direction and the even numbers going the other direction. Because that way, if we weren't sure where we were, we only had seven addresses to deal with. And we did have some locomotives that, and it was a Digitrax system, so we didn't have the option for long addressing for 2-digit numbers. And so we had some 2-digit locomotives, 16 and 91 or something like that, whatever. So we just said, okay, we don't have anything between 100 and 107, so we'll use those addresses. So it's kind of an arbitrary pick. But other than that, I would suggest like starting with the biggest number that your system will support, whether it's 99 or 127, and work down from there. Whatever floats your boat.
You don't like the one where you pick the biggest number of the engines in the consist, or a common number that's in the consist?
That'll work. But remember, you've got so like if you've got 5534, 5572, and 5591, so you call it consist 55. Yeah, that makes sense. It's whatever works for you.
Do you know of a handy way of remembering the advanced consist information, like the function tabs and the consist number?
Remembering it once you've set it in a locomotive?
Yes, like you have a train in staging, and you said it's train number or consist number 106.
Mm-hmm.
How do you remember that?
Well, how we did it with our club was we had these locomotives were permanently assigned to these trains, and the every locomotive card that we had in our car card and waybill set said, this is, for example, this is a Jeep 30, and its cab number is this, and then at the bottom of the card it says DCC address, and it'd say 103, and then there'd be another one that would be, the same information, Jeep 30 with a different cab number, and say DCC address 103. So you pick that up and you look at it, it says, okay, this is on 103, so I know what to do with it. You can. I've seen people use piece of tape stuck on it just to remember it if they need to. A whiteboard. A lot of clubs will use a whiteboard to. People bring locomotives from home that they want to run on the club on a given night, and so you walk in and you register the number of your locomotive, and they have the consists listed up there just the same way.
I was thinking when I saw the answer, how about printing a 2D barcode? Because all these new smartphones can simply scan that and tell you the information.
That's true.
Where do you stick it? Because N scale is a little small.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a system-specific question for Digitrax. What about the local file in Digitrax? What if it's full? Can you still consist? Or do you have to empty or dispatch the loco?
You've got to, if you've hit slot max, you've hit slot max. There's no way around that. You got to take out some trash before you can do anything more. And that's usually only a problem on the Zephyrs or in big clubs, because the rest of the Digitrax systems have, if you open up all the capabilities, hundreds of slots, and so it takes a pretty large club to use up 100 slots, even with the universal consisting.
Correct. So, what are the most common problems users have creating advanced consist?
Again, for the systems that assist you in setting them up, most people don't have a whole lot of problems with NCE setting them up. If they if they don't kill the consist, and then they take the locomotive off the layout and it won't run, then you have the CV19 issue needing to be reset. With and that CV19 thing bites more people than I can possibly believe, that they somehow it's gotten into a consist. Now, I think that there is a possibility that maybe 1% of them have come from static electricity changing the value of CV19, but there's it's 90. I won't say 90%, but a lot of the people say, "Well, I didn't set that." Okay, Yehudi must have done it because it's set. So moving along. Actually, it's really very simple to set it up by yourself if you don't want to get tricky about which the CV2122 thing and which functions do what. If you simply go in and pick a number like 100, and that's going to be your consist number, and you key and you go to a locomotive 1, 2, 3, 4, and you say, okay, set CV19 to 100. And then you have 5, 6, 7, 8 that you want to do back to back, so it has to go the opposite direction. You take 100 and you add 127 to it, you say, okay, 227, write 227 into CV19 on that locomotive, and now you have an advanced consist created. So it's not that difficult, but again, there you're having to choose the consist number and remember what it is. And if you take a consist that you've created like that and put it on an NCE system, the system doesn't know that. And so you don't have the advantage of using the locomotive cab numbers and being able to come along and stop and walk around your train and pick up the locomotive of the number of the lead locomotive now and go back the other way on, say, on a turn, because the system doesn't know that they're tied together if you didn't set it up on that NCE system.
Now, did you mention that you could use either locomotive's number to run it in an NCE advanced consist?
Yes. If you have 1, 2, 3, 4 going one direction and 5, 6, 7, 8 going the other direction in a back-to-back consist, if you select 1, 2, 3, 4 and say go forward, it will go the forward direction for 1, 2, 3, 4. If you say 5, 6, 7, 8, go forward, it'll go the other direction. So, it's great for doing a turn because it's just, when you run around, when you pull into town and you're going to run around to go out of town on the turn, as soon as you start going what was the reverse direction, instead of reversing the direction, just change which locomotive you're talking to, and you're golden. It's just like the crew moving around.
So if I want to unhook one of the engines and advance it a few feet forward, then I have to kill the consist first?
Yes.
Okay.
They're gonna run together no matter what.
And you also have address 100 to run the whole two in the forward direction of whichever locomotive was set for forward, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. Is it possible to advance consist a loco with a Tsunami 2 decoder with a loco with a lock sound decoder? Don't their startup? There's one part. Don't their startup properties offset each other?
You can advance consist them, but as I said at the beginning, you need to have the best thing's going to be that you're using identical decoders, you're using identical locomotives. The more variables you put into the equation, the more difficult it's going to be. And we were talking at the roundtable earlier tonight about one of the issues is there's a lot of things that while the NMRA has standardized a lot of things about DCC, there's a lot of things that aren't standard. And one of the things that's not standard is acceleration and deceleration momentum. And if you tell a loc sound decoder that, I want acceleration 10, and you tell a Soundtrax decoder, I want acceleration 10, you'll get different numbers. And some of the sound decoders will wait for the sound of the locomotive to spool up before they move, and others will start moving as soon as you say go. And you can wind up with some real tug-of-wars. You wind up with a tractor pull contest.
The one that gets me in the standard is how do you reset the decoder? That's also done several different ways.
Yeah. Well, there is no standard. That's the point.
Okay. Here is a more specific question to a Bachmann sound value decoder. This gentleman has an ABA set of H.O. Baldwin RF16s, and only the B unit has sound. So how would I consist this set to play all sounds from the B unit, regardless of which A unit is moving forward?
Well, it's really very simple. You set CV 21 and 22, that page, so that you only have you set the B unit to respond to the function address. You set on the various sound functions that you care about, and you set the A units to have the lights respond to the function address, but the rest of them to respond to the locomotive address.
Okay. And he has a power cab. Would that make a difference?
Nope. Nope, not at all.
So that's the end of the questions about, except for a comment that someone wrote, which was going to bring me to the last question. Would you like to do a speed matching clinic for us?
No. Speed matching is one of my least favorite things in the world. Actually, a friend of mine, Phil Klein, wrote a script for JMRI, and if you take a 16 channel block detector and make a circle of track and detect every 16th of the circle all the way around, and put the locomotive on there, and you say go, it would take the locomotive and run it around in one direction and run it around in the other direction, go back and forth, and eventually, when it was done, it would go in and it would change the start speed, the stop speed, until it got a match, and then it would, and it may sit there for an hour running this locomotive around. That's the best way to speed match I've ever seen.
I believe a gentleman in Tulsa with I forgot what's the name of the layout, something third sub, Mr. Steve Davis. He has one of those circles in his train room. Mm-hmm. So
probably there's a few people out there that
contract him.
Mm-hmm. There you go.
Bruce, thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Speed.
That was a little technical, but technology is technical.
Really? Oh, wow.
Maybe.
Now, can I quote you on that, Speed?
No.
Oh,
no.
Okay. You're not going to admit to it.
No.
Oh well.
Thank you very, very much.
Thank you. Now,
Brad, any questions?
No. Thank you for the clinic, Bruce.
Thank you, Brad. See you later.